Talk about my work on tutorial so far.
It's just that I'm not sure we'll have time. That was what.
It started, doesn't it? It's recording has started.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Sorry, I have
Okay.
closed it.
All right. Welcome
He
to
paused it.
the.
No, he's not. Sorry, see, he paused it, but he didn't. Try again.
Someone edit this afterwards. All right. Welcome to the cert-manager bi-weekly meeting on the 28th of November 2024. As usual, I'd like to first state that the cert-manager team, follow the CNCF Code of Conduct. And as usual, we shall start with a series of five minutes at most of announcements and shout-outs. I'll read these out. So the first announcement is we have a new release of Istio CSR, which is required for Istio 1.24 due to a change in Istio. Versions of Istio CSR prior to 0.13 won't work with Istio 1.24. That's to do with ambient credentials, right?
I think it's to do with the way Istio communicates over gRPC. You need to set something, and you need to set a protocol header in the gRPC handshake.
What did I say? Ambient credentials? I meant, is there something called ambient mode?
There is something called ambient mode. The ambient mode is Istio without sidecars.
Right. Okay. I shouldn't have tried to ad lib. All right. Thanks, Adam. Thank you. The next announcement is that we have released Approver Policy 0.17. And this contains an improvement that Erik sponsored or created, which is to have Approver Policy apply the same defaulting to the certificate requests that it reconciles, the same defaulting that cert-manager applies. Thanks, Erik, for that. So now on to the agenda items, the first of which I think we've got 4 different items from Erik today. So I'll hand over to you, Erik, to talk about the proposal for renaming the Trust Manager Bundle resource.
Yeah, thanks. You could click on the preview and show the preview just on your screen, if it's okay.
Yeah, doing that now.
I was trying to prepare this. We have a pretty old issue, which seems a bit innocent, that we have named our custom resource in Trust Manager just bundle, while it's a cluster scoped resource, which appears a bit strange for some. Also because cert-manager has cluster issuers and issuers. So what I'm trying to solve here is to actually rename it to ClusterBundle, which cannot be done with conversion webhooks, because that can only convert between versions of the same API. Main motivation is to make room for a namespace scope bundle, but also a nice opportunity. It turned out afterwards, after looking into this, that is a huge and good opportunity to slightly improve the API in certain areas. So what I'm looking for here is what's required to kind of approve the design, and then I would be happy to contribute the PRs required to do this. It suggests not a very ordinary way of doing it. I'm suggesting an approach where we do some controller magic to actually support both bundle and cluster bundle at the same time, of course, because we don't want to break anything. So the main idea here is that the cluster bundle resource will take over as the controller for the target resources in Trust Manager, which are config maps and optionally secrets around you in your cluster. But in order to support bundle, I'm suggesting to have what I call a technical controller, which will only convert a bundle resource to a cluster bundle resource. So it will modify the spec on a cluster bundle according to the spec of a bundle, and it will also update the status of the bundle with the status from the cluster bundle, which will allow a user to quite smoothly migrate from bundle to cluster bundle. So there are some more details in this, but I'm also suggesting to change the group. So we get a new group called trust-manager.io. Currently, the API group for bundle is trust.cert-manager.io. So we're kind of making Trust Manager something on its own. We already reserved this domain, so that should be quite non-controversial, I think. But I'm also suggesting some minor API changes, which we could also take a look at. They're linked in the agenda. So any comments so far? I would urge everyone to read through this design proposal and make up your mind. I'm ready to start on it whenever, if you think it's a good idea. Adam.
I was going to say, I like how the new group works, because that means we can still support this old bundle and still maybe introduce a namespace bundle at the same time, just by using different API groups. And because C becomes before T on the alphabet, the old one will still appear when you do kubectl get bundles. So, which may be a bad UX and they might motivation for us to quickly deprecate the old resource. But I do like how using the new API group, we can ensure we don't break people and still introduce potentially a namespace variant. That I think that's a good shout. I definitely think it's a chance for us to look at the fields, and if we're gonna be changing the API group, it is the perfect time to have a look at the fields.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm in favor of those aspects. I haven't read in its entirety, but those aspects I think make perfect sense to me.
Thanks. I have actually looked closely at the fields at the API. The API is not that huge, so it's quite easy to reason about. And I've done some work already in this area. So I've created an issue for the next version of the bundle. That was back in the days when we didn't consider to do this renaming. Well, I'm trying to take in some of the suggestions that were already in this issue into my proposed changes to the API.
It may be worth having an example YAML in the API in the design doc, a commented example.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I will add it. Because the main change I could summary quite quickly. We're proposing to make the namespace selector mandatory. So during the migration, we will of course retain the same behavior as bundle has, which is by default to select all namespaces, but we will add the namespace selector to ClusterBundle, stating that you select actually all namespaces. But ClusterBundle resource will actually require you to set the namespace selector, so you do it explicitly. That's one important thing. The other one is changing the target area of the API. You could look at the, I have actually a draft PR for the API changes already. Of course, on the bundle resource, but we're not going to perform those changes on the bundle API because it's going to be break things for our users. But it's mainly to be able to use API server features to validate things that for instance, that you must have unique keys in your target config maps or secrets. So we're going to use the list map type and list map key to actually make the API server validate the uniqueness of the keys specified for your target resources. So that would mean that we could simplify the webhook, which is now currently quite complex, because you have to look in multiple places to reason about whether the keys are unique, and you have to decide which keys are kind of has first priority and so on.
You mentioned the namespace selector. I'm assuming the namespace one wouldn't have a selector and would just only access things in its own namespace.
Yeah, of course. But the first step now is to migrate the bundle to ClusterBundle. So we can just introduce bundle as a namespace resource when bundle is actually gone.
You should bundle a lot, so that's the confusing part of discussing this. We're going to have bundle and bundle, old bundle and new bundle.
Yeah, but I think we should give this some time. I mean, there's really no rush here, but we should. My proposal is to deprecate the existing bundle when ClusterBundle is introduced, and then we should keep that for a couple of releases and noting it out in the release notes, of course, that it's time to migrate now, and we eventually will remove bundle when we decide it's time to do it.
Yeah. I actually had some thoughts on the API, but it's probably best to take that offline. Just things like secret referencing, using object selector so we can reference other things in the future. But we can talk about that offline.
Cool.
So what you need, Erik, is you asked, I think the original question was, how do you get this proposal, this design approved, and how do you want to get on with this? What do you need us to code review? There's a pull request with this design, right?
Yes.
So
Ashley has reviewed it and he has LGDM it. I would urge you, the others, to review it and comment. Like Adam says, add an example. That's a good idea. So we can actually get this design merged as an approved idea, at least. And then my first step would be to introduce the new ClusterBundle API as an unserved API, just as a copy of the bundle. And then I will start working on the new ClusterBundle API while it's still unserved on the main branch. That is my plan on how to proceed with this.
I don't understand that part, but that's because I haven't read the proposal in full. But yeah, okay, I'll read the proposal and add some comments.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Any other discussion on this topic? If not, I'll go back to the agenda.
Yeah, I could continue. The next point is, our next 2 points are actually points that I noted down when performing my first cert-manager org release. So the first one is about permissions to do things. I was not able to perform a full release myself without getting help from others. And this is something that I would love to fix somehow. So I'm here just to ask or discuss whether we could put some action points and decide to actually get this fixed. I know we have talked about this before.
I feel like we've kind of been waiting with this just to have someone that isn't a Venafi employee do a release to give us the kick up the backside to actually do something about it. My instinct is that probably the way we go with this is like currently what we do is we create a pull request to a private repo that adds the chart into the repo, and that does some magic behind the scenes to publish to charts.jetstack.io. Obviously, there's there's non-open source, but there's CNCF charts on that same repository, so it's quite difficult to give just anyone access to it. I wonder if maybe the quickest thing we could do would be maybe to give you access personally, Erik, because we know you're good, but that doesn't solve the problem in the long term. And if there's other maintainers that want to do releases, in that case, I think maybe we could change that repo to pull from an OCI registry that we host, that we push charts to, because we've been talking about doing that anyway, and sort of invert things around so that like things get synced to charts.jets.io from other sources rather than us creating the pull request to it ourselves, if that makes sense.
Wouldn't this be a great opportunity to actually establish a new OCI repository for the Helm charts?
Yeah, I do think this is a great opportunity to do what we've wanted to do anyway, right? But like to actually go ahead and do it.
Yeah, which would mean that we would release first to the OCI repository, and then you could do whatever you want in the Venafi private project. But
Yeah.
of course, we will have to release to the JetStack chart repository as soon as possible, of course, to not fool users. I was just joking here, but I would
Yeah,
prefer something in that direction.
I don't see why that shouldn't be achievable. Go on, Adam.
I was just going to say, I think OCI is definitely the long-term thing. For just adding users to the Venafi repo, could we use code owners as well to only charts? I mean, it's file name, so you could really abuse it, but you make it so only files beginning with like cert-manager or trust manager or any of those project names could be added by certain groups.
That could be a thing. Like at the end of the day, we require reviews on that repo anyway. So like Erik, I suppose what it would enable is Erik to create the PR and then one of us would have to review it, which
One of you.
yeah. Like
I'm not one of you anymore.
well, we could add you as well, Adam, to be fair. Like it is just one repo.
I'm okay with this as a short-term solution, but for the CNCF and for cert-manager being a serious CNCF project, I think we should try to find something better for the future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the OCI approach is definitely the approach we actually want, right? It's technically better. We want an OCI registry anyway. People want an OCI registry to download from. Like, there's all the reasons there to do that, and then it's a sync job to charts.jets.io, which I can't imagine would be too difficult. We've got similar-ish things going on already.
Okay, moving on to my last part of the sentence. And where do we track the progress on this?
That's a trickier question.
A
I don't.
GitHub issue with a GitHub issue with a series of tasks, I would have thought.
On the org,
Yeah.
maybe?
What do you mean on the org?
I mean, the issue must be created in some project, and this is, as I see it, a general problem for many projects. So where would that issue live? On the community or the org? Or
Community would be my default, I think.
sorry?
Community would probably be the one I'd go for.
Yeah. Okay.
But like Erik, what were you trying to release that you couldn't? What was it? Approve a policy?
Yes.
Right.
I was able to do everything except publishing the Helm chart.
Right.
Yeah.
But do we think that I want you to be able to do that? I want you and Adam to be able to tag team on a release, for example. But do we want to? I like the review process on the Helm chart. It's provided a useful opportunity for us to do some sanity checks before we make the Helm chart publicly available.
I also like that. I have no objection. It just feels like I was left in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you tried to do a cert-manager release, I think you could do that nowadays, right? That's all driven by a bot, which is able to create the pull request against the chart repository.
The main issue with the cert-manager one is the Google Cloud access required.
Okay. Isn't that
think
wasn't there a fix for that? Doesn't Erik make a request to the help desk or something?
Okay.
We're also admins, aren't we, in GCP? Like, I think I am, at least. I'm a project owner. We could add manually.
I think I have access. I have access to a lot of places. Tim fixed most of this.
Well,
So I'm not
further ahead
sure
than I
where
thought.
this. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's really a problem. I like transparency, so I like it to be in the open as much as possible. But I agree with Richard. A review process is something good, but I would be able to publish the GitHub release without any reviews. But that's not something we can fix, I think.
Yeah.
To what you said, Richard, about what liking the fact that you get the chance to test the Helm chart before it's published. There's nothing to say the way you get to the OCI chart registry or the future cert-manager registry isn't that we create a similar repo to the JetStex repo where you raise a pull request for the chart. Or we could even have a GitHub action that does it automatically and raises that pull request for you automatically to give you that last step approval.
I'm torn because, like elsewhere, I mean, we have said it. It's kind of silly to have that manual process. Erik, you argued like a month ago that this should all be automated. Like, and we talked about automating it. When that last cert-manager went terribly wrong, that release that went terribly wrong. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I'm in favour, and it's important to have a sort of a sanity check of some sort.
I mean, would we be comfortable looking at automating that sanity check? Because if it's just like basically the end-to-end test, but installing with the chart that we're just about to release.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. Yeah, that's what we talked about.
Yeah.
I can to get some movement on this, I can create the issue on the community project and try to sum up what I remember from this meeting. We'll get the notes from our AI companion, so that's nice. Because that's what I can do. For the other things, I think more experience is required, and probably also Venafi employee access. So should we just start with that? I will create an issue and we continue there.
Yeah.
Idea.
Good. Okay, the next point. Are we moving on?
Yeah, thank you, Erik. Carry on.
Yeah, carry on.
Or do you want a glass of water? You've been talking. You're having to do all the talking.
A glass of beer, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the next point is related. It's about the release note generator in GitHub, which is super cool. I like it, but it generates a lot of noisy lines with the PRs coming from Makefile modules and the Pandabot. So what I'm thinking here is I had a look at the GitHub docs, and I think we can make the generator smarter if we enforce pull request titles tighter, at least on those PRs that we want to group outside the more user-facing PRs, which are more interesting to look at.
Is there any way we can put something in a commit message that means it doesn't go into release notes? Like,
I think they should be in the release notes. I think it's important to have all the changes listed or linked from the release notes. I mean, me as a user, I'm managing multiple clusters, and when we install something, we look closely at the release note, and particularly if something goes wrong.
I was thinking of like Makefile modules, which should have no tangible change to the output.
I think the main point here is that we must agree that we can adjust the pull request titles of the Dependabot and Makefile modules PRs. And then I can try to configure the release note generator either to group or to remove. I think it can do both, actually. So you're suggesting to remove the Makefile modules PR and still have the Dependabot?
I'd include Dependabot for sure, just because knowing what versions got bumped is really useful, just from a security perspective. But maybe they go in their own little section.
Yeah. But we could continue this when discussing the details. But the main point, again, I think in order to do this better automatically, we need to have consistent pull request titles, as far as I know.
If I may, hi guys, I'm Miguel, sorry to interrupt. Just like whomever else said, I don't remember the name, I hope you can forgive me. There is some value in having release notes being manually written, even though it is annoying. And I do also manage a lot of systems at my work, and cert-manager is typically one of the excellent examples on how to get good change logs, especially because we retrieve them automatically with Renovate bot, and there is because we see with other systems that have these kinds of automated systems, and then you see basically a bunch of text just saying, hey, bump this version, bump this version, doesn't really tell you anything. So just be mindful about it, or at least like make it an explicit note, because it can to the point where like, okay, there's 1,000 lines here, I'm not reading them all.
That's a very good point, and I think we will continue to write release notes describing what has changed and listing all the PRs, at least that can affect you as a user of the product. This is just to generate the initial draft of the release notes. It's not the final release notes.
Yep.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, for the cert-manager itself, we use the Kubernetes upstream tool for generating release notes as a first pass, which generates all the bare bones, what pull request got in. It takes the release notes from the pull request description rather than just blindly reading comments, which allows you to do release notes none as well, which is fairly useful. So that it's another tool that we'd like, as opposed to using the GitHub automatic ones, but that could be a way of getting consistency, is using the same generator across all our projects.
I too like the release notes tool that Adam just described, but I don't want to overcomplicate this. I'd be interested to see what you can achieve with this configuration of the GitHub release notes generator, Erik.
I mean, my motivation is mainly because I had to do very boring, error-prone work when finalizing the release notes. So I'm not in favor of any particular solution. I just want to eliminate the boring and error-prone work of grouping these Dependabot and Makefile modules PRs, so they don't destroy the interesting things in the release notes. I took inspiration from some releases that Ashley created, just to see how it's typically done. So I tried to do my best, and of course I wrote something on the top and describing the main headlines in this release, as we should, and what users should do and not do, and so on. That will not change. It's the less interesting PRs that at least how Ash has been doing it was to organize them in kind of one line where you just list them, the PRs, as links. And that was boring to do and very error prone. I could easily make a mistake there.
Certainly, I feel like we're in agreement that having some automation here is like is a really good idea. I would be comfortable with renaming the titles on anything automated for sure. I don't know if maybe there's an approach with tags like PR labels rather, not tags, that might. I don't know if that would be easier or not. I don't know if Dependabot will allow for things to be customized to that extent, but like any like at the end of the day, this is all documentation and it will help with documentation. So I'm fully supportive of any efforts to improve this.
The bots we have already in the org that do like you can do /kind with, they add labels, and it looks like the GitHub one they just configure with labels. So we could potentially use the same like /kind automation in order to group things in the output.
Yeah, like kind dependable kind automation. Like the automation one is just like probably we could remove or people could ignore it if they care enough. They can look at the Git diff. But the kind dependable is worthy of its own section, and the other kinds are all there as well. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, and add it to if it's not already there, add it to the issue template as well. So like by default as a /kind, and then you put something after that.
Yeah.
Miguel,
Are we able to?
I'd like to have asked you a bit more about the. Are you still there?
Yeah. I just muted myself. I didn't
What
wanna
was
bother.
it? What was it that you? What was the tool you said you used to?
Oh, I used
through which you received the release notes.
Yeah, I use Renovate Bot. In fact, if you guys allow me to share, I can share my screen. I don't think I have anything that should not be shared. So
I think I'm host. If you
I'm happy for you to share, yeah.
shit. I'm running, sorry, my language. I'm running Wayland, and Zoom client does not allow me to share my screen. Is there any way that I can post an image on the chat? Does that work on Zoom?
You could paste it in Google Doc.
Yeah, let me see. So this is we use Renovate Bot with Helm charts. And let me see if I can just paste it here. Yes. So that is how it looks like. If you guys want to bring it up into the screen, that's good for me. Again, sorry for the Spanish. This was like a month ago. It just generates the merge requests, and Renovate Bot is smart enough to pick up the release notes, and they are excellent in your case.
So is that because the release notes are that it looks like that is because the release notes are copied in full into the GitHub release. Some projects don't do that, do they? Some projects, I think Kubernetes refer you to a different changelog site or document in the repository, or am I misremembering?
I think you're right. I think it has the Renovate Bot has a lot of like knobs and things you can tweak, but by default I think it just picks up whatever is on GitHub release docs and just posts it in there. And it works even if you link it to somewhere else. It works really well because you still get a link that you can just click, and it's a new tab. But tomato, it's still the same thing. So just be aware. I know that I can see if I can maybe find other examples of really terrible tools that just show the tag and just don't show anything. And you're like, okay, great. Then I need to do a bit more digging. But you guys are an excellent example. And please don't change that.
Great. Okay, thanks.
I can promise you that's not going to change.
Yes. Thank you. You make my life easy.
And the main thing I would change, and the agenda would be to make the sub projects have the same similar quality of release notes. That's standardization across the projects to have quality release notes everywhere. I think is the goal, rather than making the cert-manager instead of bringing the cert-manager ones down. We want to raise the.
No.
Yeah, I think it would be nice. I quite like the release notes in the website as well. I mean, I don't want to complicate things, but ultimately we might find a way of doing for the sub projects what we do for cert-manager. Quite like to see the release notes in the Helm chart README as well.
No, you're
asking a lot, Richard. But are we able to define some action points here?
I think if you want to continue exploring what GitHub can do and see if it can generate release notes as good as well, at least better than they are, and getting the groupings correct and things like that.
I'm not personally into a particular solution. I'm totally on board on what you're suggesting. If we are able to do that without a considerable amount of work.
Yeah. I mean the GitHub root's already automatically created, isn't it? So potentially this could be automated using the same GitHub action that generates the release. It could also add the release notes, leave it in the draft state for a human to do the touch-ups.
I'd love that if we could, if that was part of the cert-manager release process. Yeah.
That would be excellent as well. Yeah. So Magic Release Process is a bit more of a beast in the sub projects.
Action points though. So action points are, Erik, to go ahead and try out this, see what you can achieve with the GitHub, with configuring the GitHub release note generator.
That seems like a simple thing to do, while I still agree with your suggestion to make this consistent across our projects. And probably, as we heard in this meeting, I have a feeling that cert-manager is close to what our users prefer.
Yeah.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. Okay.
How are we doing for time? We've got about 15 minutes left. So let's crack on.
Yes. The next point is a tough nut. It's it made some we obviously have some disagreements in the team here. My point in raising this is that I was really annoyed by having to perform workarounds in my local workstation environment, because whenever I want to create or run an integration test, I need to run the make command to make the CRDs updated, and then I need to set some environment variable in the test setup in my IDE in order to pick up the CRD from the correct location, which is actually, in this case, it was in Trust Manager, where they're located under _bin/scratch/something. It's a very temporary location. So what I was suggesting is to allow the files generated by control again to be first-class citizens, so they actually committed to Git, which is a normal thing to do in any operator project basing their setup on KubeBuilder, for example. In particular, Tim was against this, and after talking with the other team members of the team, there are some aspects here which we should approach this with caution. I agree with this, because we must be ensure that we don't confuse our users. These generated CRDs are not to be used by end users. It's something that we use for development and testing, and also they need more work to come into the Helm chart, which is the official installation method.
I think what I didn't understand, I was in one or two of those meetings, the stand-up meetings, and it will still be necessary for you, Erik, to run the make command first in order to get the KubeBuilder assets into the Scratch directory or wherever it is. It will still be necessary for you to set up an environment variable to tell Go where to load those from.
No, if we check in the generated files, there will be static manifests that are readable by the normal test end by using relative paths. So that means we could remove the environment variable pointing to the location where test end is finding this CRD.
How will envtest know where to find the downloaded etcd binary, for example?
That is installed by Makefile Modus, I think. That's among the tools that you install. We download controller tools. I think it's named. Adam might have more knowledge in this area. But that is
Okay.
not the problem.
No, but if that in that case, why is it not sufficient to change the default in the tests, the default base path for those loaded CRDs could be a fixed what's the word a known path in the Scratch directory, right? It could be that when you run make, it downloads the cube builder artifacts and it puts the CRDs into _bin/artifacts. And that would be the default loading directory for the CRDs.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm suggesting, but except that I suggest to commit those files into Git.
But why? There's no need to commit them.
It's because, let's say a random drive-by contributor comes and wants to submit some kind of change. He or she clones the project, but has already installed Control Again. It's a cloud developer, so you already have the tools. You have Go, you have Control Again, you have etcd, API server, all the tools available, and you have an IDE as I have. So if I clone a cert-manager project, I have to run at least one makefile goals to be able to run any test from within my IDE.
That's still the case, right? I mean, I still don't understand. I'll keep pushing but that random developer may have etcd on their laptop, but we don't want them to be testing with that random etcd. We want them to be testing with our specific version of etcd. So they still have to run make, and they still have to run the version of etcd which is put in the bin folder. So why can't we change the default? Why can't the tests load the CRDs from the bin folder?
I'll be okay with that solution as long as we remove the environment variable, which is required to set in my IDE test setup. Then I would be okay with that.
I would, yeah. I think we should that's definitely the thing we should definitely want to do, is make tests shouldn't require any extra magic to run. It should just run.
Yeah.
Whether,
by the way, make test does not require any extra magic. It's go test.
Go test. I use an IDE, so I run my test. I run a single test from within my IDE. But of course, it's using Go test behind the scenes.
And you don't want to have to configure all the environments for the project like by hand.
Yes, that is my main pain point. So I would be okay what you are suggesting, Richard, that we remove these environment variables and agree on a well-known location of these files under the _bin scratch or something. I wouldn't mind too much. That would require me to run make once, and then I could start working in my IDE.
I believe when you use env tests as well, when you programmatically use it to spin up the environment, you specify the folder in code where it is. So that, if we just hard coded it in the Go test main function, then it could be anywhere.
I feel like I come at this from an angle of like I'm not sure what the harm is of doing it, right? As long as we're checking that the CRDs are up to date when a PR is being reviewed, I automatically check that they're up to date, then it's not presenting a problem from that angle. We can always like add comments and say, hey, look, you're not meant to use these, like beware, like this is for testing or whatever. That's all good. Like I think if we could, I would check in like binaries of Helm for each architecture, for example, for all of our projects, because then you don't have to download anything to get things working. You don't have to run anything to get things working. You've got it all there. The reason we don't is obviously because they're binaries that are large and that has problems. We're never actually going to check in Helm. But the CRDs, like they're fairly small, they're text-based. They're fairly important anyway, and they're useful for like browsing through by hand. Like even outside of Erik's needs with his IDE, like it just seems decent to have them checked in. I don't have a problem with that. So I think that's where I've ended up like in support of it, is like, it just seems reasonable to have them there, especially if we have a comment that says, don't use these for deploying to your cluster.
Yeah,
It just seems like no harm.
Yeah, but that's Erik doesn't need them checked in to solve his problem.
Like, yeah,
It's not
fine.
a good reason. You can't say we checked them in so that Erik could. Sorry, I shouldn't use your name. So that a developer like Erik can run the tests using Go test, because that's not true. That developer still has to run make before they can use Go test, because we want them to use our particular versions of Cube Builder. So we can solve that problem by making the default CRD path, whatever it's called, to be the /bin/artifacts.
I mean, it's fair to say that, right? Like, I guess I'm arguing a slightly different thing to what will solve Erik's problem, and like I'm not going to spend the time. It's not a big deal either way.
I think so that if someone had come along and said that we find it's difficult for us to know what the CRDs look like because they're not there in your repository.
I mean, like it's a pain point that I've had, right? Like, I guess my argument would be to put them outside of _bin and have them checked in, because like there's been times when I was like, oh, I want to look at the CRDs for certificate request policy for whatever reason, and like the way that I went about doing that was to download the Helm chart and template it out and look at the CRD that came out of that, which is probably closer to how it will be deployed. But like for a quick look at a YAML file, like it doesn't seem bad to have it checked in a path. But like I do accept that Erik's problem will be solved by having it under bin, and just having a static path, probably that doesn't include Scratch, like would be fine from that angle. I'm
Yeah, the
supportive of
word I was
that too.
looking for was something, a more stable path. Like Scratch makes
Yeah.
it seem like it's very temporary and flaky, but
And it is, right? We shouldn't be telling people to rely on Scratch, but _bin under like test end stuff, whatever, that works.
As well, from a developer perspective, for controllers for operators that don't have webhooks, I don't bother when developing. I don't bother installing them in a client cluster. I'll just go run them and run them locally. And you need the CRDs installed, so having the CRDs in the folder would mean I could just apply them, run the operator locally on my machine, and not bother to have to run like the whole installation into a build the image, install it into a cluster for what is it, like a one-line change to fix my stupid mistake.
well, that's true. I mean, that's a use case, isn't it? People who want to develop other controllers that depend on approval policy, they want to be able to download the CRDs.
We already are facing this problem in many of our operators.
But
So
that would be an argument for publishing the CRD YAML along, like, to the release as a release artifact.
Yeah, but they are more tricky to download. I mean, we are using heavily customize, and I think others might be using it. It's easier to point customize to something which is in Git, stored in Git, instead of to a more or less random release download location.
Okay, I hadn't realized and appreciated that. So you could point them at a tagged, a GitHub tag URL. Yeah.
Yeah, and also get renovate when there's a new version of the operator that you depend upon. It actually works out of the box with the Git URLs you put into a customized reference. As an example, you're all arguing, or you and Tim are arguing that it's not needed. I would be interested to hear what problems do you see with this? That I haven't understood really. Why are you so against this?
I'm against. I was against it because it seemed unnecessary. What you were proposing seemed unnecessary to solve the problem you had stated. But now you've stated about the customized problem, I'm starting to come around to it.
Yeah, but I mean, I should know what's necessary or not. I mean, I have the tools installed. So what you're saying is correct, that you want me to test with the versions that we have set in the project that you're working on. But for early development, debugging something in the code to just look at how is this actually done right now. I just want to set a breakpoint, for instance. It's not a requirement to run with the exact version. We have CI for that, and of course we should continue to have it. So it's not really an argument to say that it's not necessary. But I feel a bit alone here, so I'm okay to step down on this. I have no problem with it. I found my workarounds.
No, I don't want to. I'm not. I don't. Why? We're not. We agree, right? I don't understand what you just said. I didn't understand that setting the breakpoint thing. But
For the record,
I think the argument against it is having like two versions of the CRDs checked in. They still will. It just seems kind of ugly to have the CRDs in the templates directory of the chart and checked in elsewhere.
Adam?
I actually don't mind them having checked in twice because the template ones are unusable without Helm. Having them in pure YAML makes it like
That's exactly my argument too. One is the Helm template, the other one is Kubernetes resource.
I'd also say if we're using the make generate to build these YAMLs, make verify will check they're correct. There's no possibility of drift. Like they're going to be correct in both places anyway. Like it's not like we're handcrafting these things; they are generated through automation. So I can't see a downside of including in like a / deploy CRDs, and I can see upsides.
If you want another upside, one fairly common pattern for me, I use CLion, which is an IntelliJ based one, and the Kubernetes plugin, you can send them like URLs where it picks up CRDs. And since it's basically open API with like a grain of salt on top of it, it can do syntax highlighting for custom resource definitions, and that is pretty useful. I have never tried to set it up in cert-manager. Maybe I can't because they're not checked in. So if you want another reason.
I think you can by referring to the CRDs on the release downloads. So it's actually possible to use from there.
Yeah, I have no stake on this. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in here.
Thank you. We're running out of time now.
I kind of feel like maybe the way forward here is just to try this out on one repo or something, see how it feels. If it doesn't cause any problems, we can expand it. Like, if it does cause a problem, we can revisit. But like, I don't think it's doing any serious harm to just add it a YAML file, right? Like, stylistically, we might have preferences one way or another, but I feel like if we were talking something huge, I would have reservations, but it's so easy to revert this if it turns out to be a problem. I kind of feel like let's go for it. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I'm convinced now. Yeah.
Sounds.
Thanks, Richard.
I'm in favor. Like we think we have a vague consensus. I'll try it. We can always back out.
Thank you. So I would expect some real reviews on the PR so we can actually merge it eventually in a proper state. So agreeing on the paths and whether it should be part of the Helm module or whether we should try to move it out to a separate module with dependencies. As I noted, I would probably need at least some guidance in order to do that because I'm not too familiar with Makefile modules. But I also think that we could make this a small change initially, and then we could refactor later. That's what I would prefer.
I'm always in favor of small changes that we can build upon.
I think maybe we create an issue when we merge this, so don't forget.
Pick someone, Erik. Assign it to someone to review. I think that's what I would do. A friendly reviewer.
I assigned it to Adam and Tim, which I think have more.
Don't never do that. Don't get 2 people involved. Just get one friendly person involved.
Get 2 people involved. They go, oh, someone else can deal with the other person can deal with this, and they get back to what they were doing.
I would appreciate your review, Adam, since you are in favor. So if you could suggest some improvements if required.
I'll look at it tomorrow. Yeah, I'm off to reInvent on Saturday, so it's gonna have to be tomorrow, or you're waiting a week.
Yeah, there's no rush here, so take your time. Thanks.
Okay. Shall we finish there? I need to go.
Yeah, I have to go.
Yeah. The next could be moved forward again. It's not the problem. There is absolutely no rush.
Thanks, Erik, for all the preparation for the meeting as well. All right, see you all in 2 weeks. Goodness, thanks for all your contributions, by the way. Oh, goodness, I should have announced this. He's working on some updates to the cert-manager tutorials. He's been chatting to me in Slack, so we can discuss that next time we meet.
Okay,
Cool.
great.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks,
See you.
everyone.
Subscribe.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.